Welcome back, Pillow Talkers. It's your girl. It is currently Sunday evening in Seattle. And Sunday evening for me means 9 p.m. to midnight, my favorite radio show on KEXP, my favorite radio station in Seattle. Deeply transcendent electronic music. It's really good. You should check it out. It's a super fun thing I do with myself to prep my energy for the week every week. Actually, I still have my middle school boom box, which I have stickers all over, and that's what I listen to it on. I'm recording this between dance parties with myself. Thought I'd take a little break. I was feeling a little sweaty, and I was like, now is a good time to record this episode. Speaking of being sweaty, I'm wearing some man deodorant and cologne today, which I love to do. I like to do that sometimes because then I just feel attracted to myself all day. I'm very into scents. I wear this delicious vanilla musk oil most days, and that has very high femme energy to it. And I also feel attracted to myself when I wear that. You know, the joys of being bisexual. Relax. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Welcome to Pillow Talk Radio, the most delicious place to be. On this podcast, we explore how to create more connection, possibility, romance, and magic in love and in life. I'm your host and relationship specialist, Cora Boyd. Are you with me? On today's episode, I'm going to talk about the two biggest blockers to things moving forward in your love life. And before I get into it, I want to emphasize that I'm not sharing these blockers to scare you in a way of you're doing these things and you feel nervous system freak out. Oh my God, have you been doing these two things and making a goddamn fool of yourself? No, not at all. My hope is that in sharing these, I want to emphasize, number one, how common, how universal these things are so you can feel better because you're not the only person who experiences these blockers or maybe feels stuck around these two things. And number two, I hope that in sharing this, you will see just how possible it is to clear these blocks and actually how close you really are to things moving forward in your love life once you clear these blocks. The first block is fear of rejection. This is something that every single person that I have worked with as a client, so many of my friends, anyone that I talk to around dating and romance and intimacy, when we follow the thread of conversation, the thread of inquiry, and get down to what is the actual fear, 99.9999999% of the time, it has to do with some variation of fear of rejection. So if any of y'all have seen the video I did with Hi-Ho Kids, if you haven't, you can look it up. It's called Kids Meet a Dating Coach. It's extremely adorable. I had a blast doing it. So you'll see, you will see in that video how I'm talking to kids, I'm talking to small children, teenagers, various ages in between about dating and crushes, etc. And the top fear that they are bringing up is fear of rejection, is this fear of, well, what if they don't like me? Or what if they say no? Or blah. And it's just funny. I find it really heartwarming and affirmative that is also the exact same fear that surfaces for clients of mine who are in their 50s, 60s, 20s, 30s, 40s. Basically all my clients, anyone I've ever worked with, right? That is a very, very relevant fear that surfaces, that fear of rejection. It is incredibly universal. So this fear of rejection can really, really block things from moving forward or deepening, both before a relationship has even begun, right? Like it might be the thing that holds you back from going for it, throwing your hat in the ring, for flirting, for expressing interest, for asking someone out, etc. So it's a blocker to things happening at all. And it can be a blocker deeper down into the relationship, years down the road in established relationships, right? Fear of rejection is still a relevant fear that can surface, whether that is fear of our partner leaving us, fear of opening up ourselves even more, opening our hearts up even more, right? We may have them 60% open, right, for the entire relationship and just be afraid to go that much deeper, to open up that much more because of a fear of rejection, right? So we're still clinging on to closing up out of a way to protect ourselves, to protect our hearts from the possibility of rejection, right? Sometimes we might not say how we actually feel because we fear rejection, right? Sometimes we might not say or own what we really want and need because we are afraid of that being rejected. And sometimes we reject the other person unconsciously because that is a defense mechanism before they can reject us. That's actually quite common. And that, again, can happen at any stage in the relationship. What that might look like earlier on in the relationship is really disqualifying someone or not even being open and available to meeting new people because we want to reject them before they are able to reject us. And this is more often than not unconscious behavior. I'm even thinking about, I brought this up with the girls in Magnetics Love School recently, this example of you get dressed up and, it's a big blowout night. You go to a bar and you want to meet a guy, right? And that's the intention. But then you spend the entire night being standoffish, not making eye contact, looking aloof, being aloof, all of these things, right? You're actually rejecting the possibility of someone approaching you out of a fear, a deeper fear of being rejected ourselves, right? I know some listeners can definitely relate to that experience. We also might start to sabotage a relationship unconsciously deeper into being in one because we're afraid of being rejected, right? We're so afraid of being rejected. So that is the number one blocker, is allowing the fear of rejection to control you, allowing the fear of rejection to inform your behaviors. And that might be conscious. It is likely unconscious, right? But essentially allowing that fear of rejection to hold you back from all the goodness, all the yummy, gooey shit that takes real vulnerability to experience. And real vulnerability means holding the possibility of potential rejection. So I actually don't even like to use the word rejection when I work on this with clients. I have other words that I use, and I have ways that I help them shift their mindset around this concept so that it does not control the show, so that it does not steer the ship and does not actually block them from experiencing what they want to experience, experiencing the connection, the fun, the intimacy, the growth, etc., all the good shit. More on that in another episode. The second thing that I see being an enormous blocker, and this is connected to fear of rejection. And if you've listened to this podcast long enough, or ever worked with me or followed me on Instagram or whatever, you probably know that I will always tell you that everything is connected to everything else in relationships. And it's true. It's all a big web. So this is, it's definitely connected to fear of rejection. And this is not expressing or creating attraction. I say expressing attraction and creating attraction. I kind of clumped them together. In reality, there's a distinction between the two. And yes, you guessed it, they are interconnected. So the primary reason why we don't express or take these steps, right, like display these behaviors that do create attraction, is because we don't know how to do it, right? Or because we're afraid of rejection. One or the other, right? And when we don't do it, we don't learn how to do it. So it can kind of build on itself in that way. The reality is, for anything to move forward in your love life, whether it is that initial spark that initial conversation where you're like, whoa, are they flirting with me? Am I flirting with them? What's happening? Whoa, is this a vibe? What's going on? To later on in relationships, or, moving relationships towards defining, hey, what is this? What's going on? What do you want this to be? Those kinds of conversations. And later on in relationships, when you are established with each other and you want to keep attraction alive and you want to feel confident to meet each other's needs of feeling attractive, right? This ability, this capacity to both express attraction and create attraction is essential. Without knowing and understanding the energetics of attraction and what actually creates and builds attraction, and without acting on that knowledge, right? Expressing that attraction and displaying these behaviors that create attraction, we stay in neutralized energy with another person, right? So there might be a bond, but there isn't attraction, right? We might be feeling connected with them, right? But we're not sure why we feel like we're always in the friend zone, right? We're not sure how to traverse into the romance zone. So this is where the concept of micro risks, what I like to call micro risks, really comes into the equation. What I mean when I say micro risks is literally taking small risks, sometimes larger risks, at various intervals in relationship building and relationship progressing and, relationship existing, because relationships are living organisms. They do not stay static. Relationships take courage, and taking risks takes courage, even taking what I call micro risks. So a micro risk might be opening our mouth to start a conversation with someone, right? It's a micro risk because the stakes are low logically, right? Physiologically, we might feel differently. Our brain starts chirping up, our ninja mind starts chirping up and is like, oh God, they're going to do this, bah, 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 right? Like this whole cacophony of hyperbolized worst case scenarios might start to register in our brain and also for our nervous system physiologically. But logically, the stakes are actually low, right? It is a micro risk. There is the possibility of something happening that doesn't feel good to us, or their response not being aligned with what we hope it's going to be, or any variety of things, right? When we first start to edge the dynamic into flirtatious territory, that's a micro risk because we don't know entirely how they're going to respond to that. We don't know entirely if they're attracted to us as well. We don't know entirely what's going to happen. It's a micro risk. When we get deeper into a relationship and we start expressing genuine interest, right? Like feelings are starting to come online and the stakes are starting to raise emotionally, right? We need to take risks. Sometimes those don't feel so micro at that point, right? But we can recognize those as these incremental little risks both parties need to take in order for anything to move forward relationally. Because so the visual I like to conjure up for my clients is 4 cars at a 4-way stop, just sitting there being like, you go, no, you go, no, you go, right? Or 2 cars in this case, but I like the visual of 4 cars because it's more theatrical, right? But the point is, someone has to take the lead at some point in order for anything to move forward, right? And ideally, and this is a whole nother topic of investment and pacing that I work on with my clients, of being able to read this feedback of how is someone investing in the relationship with us? How are we, and what are we basing our decision to invest more in the relationship with them? What are ways to invest and to read levels of investment, et cetera? At what pace are we investing? All these things, right? Again, another episode. But the point is, both people need to be taking small and larger risks, right? And I say risk because that's any time that we make a move, step into some leadership and the dynamic to move it forward, not knowing for certain what's going on for the other person or if they will meet us in that step that we take forward. And we got to do it. We've got to do that. Otherwise, nothing happens, right? We're just cars at a four-way stop, sitting there stagnantly. So in terms of how this confidence and this capability to express and create attraction is so, so, so important, not only for building relationships, right? Getting into relationships, attracting people, like early stages of dating and courtship, but also for established relationships, right? For lifelong romantic relationships. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Never stop flirting. Never stop flirting, right? Because if you are, let's say you're in a monogamous relationship, what you're essentially doing when you're in a monogamous relationship is you're saying, subtext to each other, hey, you know that thing that it feels really fun and makes us feel alive and deeply energized and excited about life? You know that feeling of being attractive? Cool. Well, we're going to do that. We're going to give each other that feeling, and we're going to, within this relationship, do such a good job at making each other feel attractive and reminding each other of how attractive we are that we don't need to go elsewhere for that, right? So I have plenty of thoughts about the importance of actually getting to enjoy your attractiveness and express your attractiveness and your sexuality outside of your relationship, whether it's a monogamous relationship or not. And again, that can look like a lot of things. That does not need to mean dating other people necessarily. That does not need to mean sleeping with other people. It doesn't need to mean any of those things. It can mean whatever you want it to mean, but it can even mean just like in the way you dress, right? And the way that you walk, all of these things. But I just feel so emphatically that it's really, really healthy for both individuals and for the health of the relationship, that attraction and the feeling of being attractive is we're able to express that not just in the presence of our partner, right? Because it puts an enormous amount of pressure. Pressure, right? So that brings me back to why it is so important, especially if we're in a monogamous relationship, to know how to express and create attraction with your partner. Because if the agreement is, okay, we're in a monogamous relationship, we are meeting this need for each other and we're meeting this need within this relationship. If you're not doing that, right? If both parties just like stop doing that for each other, and in the agreement of the relationship, it's not okay for that need to be met elsewhere, that need is not being met, and that will grow to resentment, which will likely erode the relationship. So that's the first reason. The second reason why knowing how and having confidence in our ability to express and create attraction is so important within established relationships is that it enables us to hold our standards within a relationship. So let me explain that a little deeper. When we feel the confidence to create attraction and to have agency in meeting people and bringing that dynamic online when we want to, right? Whether or not we choose to. And again, this is different for different relationships. And ideally, we're on the same page about whatever that looks like within our relationship with our partner. When we feel confident in our ability to actually meet new people, it does not matter whether or not we are actually out there meeting new people. But when we know that we can, we are much more likely to ask for our needs to be met, to ask for what we want, to hold ourselves to our standards and invite our partner to meet our standards, meet our needs, meet our desires, etc. Because we know that if they don't, right, if they refuse to meet our needs within a relationship, if we're just on totally different pages and it's not working out and all of these things, we know that we could leave the relationship because we feel the abundance mindset of knowing that we could go out and meet someone else and create attraction with them and create another relationship, right? This does not mean that we're going to do that per se, but the knowing, the confidence in our ability to do that actually improves existing relationships because we're not swallowing our needs, not standing for what we want, not communicating what we want, even at the risk of our partner not being on the same page or being upset by that ask or whatever the case might be, because we think that we can't go out and meet someone else. So we should just shrink in this relationship because it's all we can have, right? So that is so, so, so important. Our ability, our confidence, and our capacity to create and express attraction. And essentially that means our skill set of being able to meet new people actually improves our existing established relationships because we are that much more willing to show up courageously within our relationship, right? Because we know that we could feasibly go out and meet someone else, right? When we feel that agency, we're much more courageous. We are much more courageous in our communication. We are much more courageous and honest, right? When we don't feel that agency, that knowing how to express and create attraction gives us, we feel that we don't have options and we might feel that we are settling, right? We might feel that we are shrinking within our relationship. Again, shrinking leads to resentment and that resentment erodes relationships. So not to get too dark there, but I just want to emphasize hardcore how much these skills matter, right? How much the confidence that having these skills and the confidence and the agency that we feel when we feel that we know how to navigate our love lives, when we feel like we know how to attract people, etc. It is so essential for our confidence in every area of life, right? And it really enables us to step forward honestly and courageously. And that is what it takes to create relationships that are really fucking awesome and epic, right? It's relationships where both people are having courageous conversations with each other, right? And like having sometimes more challenging conversations with each other and taking these micro risks within established relationships, because that is what actually allows us to, with each other, create relationships that do meet both people's needs, where both people are feeling fully expressed and they're not shrinking. Does that resonate? This is so, so, so important. So it's not just about knowing how to flirt. It's not just about attracting people initially. It is the same thing that gives us the agency on a deeper level to show up fully expressed within established relationships and to continue to meet each other's needs for feeling attractive and feeling sexy and all these wonderful things we get to give and experience with each other within romantic relationships, right? Oh, it's so good. It's so good, you guys. It's so good. Now that I've identified those two main blockers, fear of rejection, number one, huge blocker that holds people back, early stages and later stages of relationships, and frankly, in all areas of life, not knowing how to flirt, i.e. express and create attraction, which are slightly different things, but very much interconnected, right? So I'm just going to summarize that of not flirting, right? Often because we don't know how to flirt, or we fear rejection. Those are the two biggest blockers holding most people back from experiencing what they want to in romance. Very universal, very, very, very possible to shift. And quite frankly, not all that difficult to shift if we know what we're doing and we know how to shift them. So with the fear of rejection, that is primarily a mindset shift. Huge shifts in how we interpret feedback and the stories that we tell ourselves about, right? The meaning that we make from different interactions that we're going to have and the meaning we make of, quote, rejection. Flirting, i.e. expressing and creating attraction, is a skill as much as it is an art form. It is highly learnable. And it is one of the most fun things to learn. It is one of my absolute favorite things to teach clients. These two blockers, rejection and not flirting, are interconnected. Both have to do with our confidence. Both have to do with accumulating experience, right? Accumulating a large pool of data and interpreting mindset, what meaning we make of the data available from our accumulated experiences, right? And in order to accumulate experience, it means we actually have to get out there and do shit. Both have to do with our confidence and our ability to read feedback from other people. Because if we can read feedback, if we can get those temperature checks, if we can gauge where someone else is at, we're not going to experience rejections that are as shattering and humiliating as we fear them to be in our worst fear of fears, right? Because we're going to be able to read where these micro risks that we take, or, sometimes macro risks, they're calibrated risks, right? They're not just blind shots in the dark. I mean, they can be, go right ahead, right? But we don't have to do it that way. We can take calibrated risks, right? Risks, because there's the uncertain element. We don't know entirely how the other person is going to respond, but we've read the feedback well enough that we've calibrated, okay, this is a little risk or big risk that I'm going to take. Flirting is also a micro risk, right? Because we're introducing sexuality, we're introducing we're introducing attraction energy into a dynamic, and we don't know entirely how the other person is going to respond. And our ability to read feedback is what gives us the confidence to know that we want to introduce it in the first place, calibrate the risk of introducing it in the first place, and to move the dynamic forward in response to, are they picking up what I'm putting down here? So that's it for today. Those are the two main blockers. And what I want to tell you, and I'm so excited to tell you, is that I have just opened up doors for my month-long flirting intensive program called Flirt Harder, where I will teach you how to move through these blockers. I'm so excited about this. It's a 30-day program in mastering the art of creating and expressing attraction. And it is going to be so fun, so playful. As I told you, this is some of my absolute favorite work to do with clients. And I really started to jam out on this with my clients when I started to host these flirting role play parties where I'd invite a bunch of them and we role play out different flirting scenes, and I'm able to give them live coaching in the moment. They're able to gauge, oh, that's what flirting is. Oh, like here's literally what I can say. Oh, here's literally some strategies I can do. Oh, this is that elusive thing people talk about. Like, oh, this is how I move relationships forward. This is how I participate. This is how I have agency in moving things forward in my love life. So Flirt Harder, it's going to be lit. We kick off October 20th and early bird enrollment is happening now. You can go snag your spot at coraboydcoaching.com/flirtharder. And all the details are there. If you have any questions whatsoever, you can email my team, hello@coraboydcoaching.com. I'm just so excited to help you clear these blocks so you can get the fuck after it. So thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful for you, please let me know what you thought. Take a screenshot and tag me in your Instagram story with any insights or questions that you have. And if you liked this episode, if you find value from what I share, I would so appreciate you leaving a review for this podcast in Apple Podcasts. That's all, folks. I'm going to get back to sweating my man deodorant and dancing to expansions alone in my living room. So sending you lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Pillow Talk Radio. I'm Cora Boyd, and make sure to subscribe so we can keep you in the loop. In the interim, you can find me on Instagram at @TheCoraBoyd, YouTube Cora Boyd, website coraboydcoaching.com. Have an excellent rest of your day, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are, and we'll catch you next week.